Now, the Biden administration is on the ropes, as Sean and I just talked about, and it's going to use just about any possible excuse it can find to change the subject and then silence its critics. Now, let's just walk past down memory lane. First, they used the riots of January 6th as a justification to fence off the Capitol with razor wire. They did this for several months, by the way, costing us tens of millions of dollars. I don't even think we know the final amount. The FBI treated ordinary citizens who weren't part of any violence at all at the Capitol as dangerous insurrectionists and domestic terrorists. Second, they used COVID to villainize medical professionals who were actually treating COVID patients, who also saw right through Tony Fauci's bureaucratic blather and the CDC's cherry-picked data. Remember, our medicine cabinet knew for 2 years that lockdowns were just going to prolong the pandemic and closing the schools was going to end up destroying kids' lives. Doctors who questioned Biden and all of the medical experts that were touted on television every day from the left, well, the doctors who actually knew what they were doing had their livelihoods threatened. In the end, though, we were right, and the mandates are finally being lifted. Now, obviously, neither of those topics work to turn Americans' attention away from Biden's mounting domestic problems of crime, inflation, high energy prices, and an open border. A wall of opposition is building against Democrats nationwide. Now, remember Virginia parents. They elected Glenn Youngkin after seeing that the teachers' unions were really the ones in charge in education. And in that world, Aristotle loses out to Ibram Kendi, and George Washington's just not as important as George Floyd. Now, this is going to flatten the Democrats this fall, and I think they know it. So, this leaves Democrats with no other choices this election season but to go with a golden oldie. So forget about the gas closing in on $5 a gallon, because Russia's on the move.
We're united in our understanding of the urgency and seriousness of the threat Russia is making to global peace and stability.
This is the greatest threat to security in Europe since World War II. Ukraine is in danger. President Putin is blatantly and violently breaking the laws.
I mean, listen, guys, we're talking about the potential for war in Europe. I mean, let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about.
Do any of these people really care about Ukraine and Russia? Now, remember, not long ago, Obama talked about he wanted to make deals with Russia, and then he made fun of Romney for sounding the alarm on Putin.
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War's been over for 20 years.
The Democrats don't care about Russia. They never have. They care about holding on to power at all costs. They certainly didn't care about Russia when the Soviet Union was actually a real threat to the United States in the 1980s. But now that Russia has an economy about the size of Italy's, they care? So how did we get here? Well, the answer, believe it or not, lies over in China, which has now become Russia's biggest booster in this current conflict. For 2 decades, elites here in the United States thought it was a good idea to build up China, make them richer and more powerful even. Biden not only thought it, but he said it.
That a rising China is a positive development, not only for China, but for America and the world writ large.
And now China has all it needs to prop up Russia no matter what Putin does in Ukraine. Biden not only got a rising China, they're poised to surpass the United States economically and already have a larger standing army than we do. So to the extent that Russia is any real threat today, it's only because China is standing beside them. Biden promised he was going to return us, didn't he, to our proper standing in the global community, the rules-based international order, and that he was going to be a unifying force around the world. Remember that? But after 1 year, he's weakened America, and he's united our enemies. Quite an accomplishment. Mark my words. As long as China is perceived as the most powerful country in the world, the U.S. is going to have a tough time containing someone like Putin. Rather than figuring out ways to make China weaker and unite America, Biden and the Hill Democrats are looking for new villains here at home. Searching for a strategy to avoid a 2020 midterm disaster, advisors to President Biden have discussed elevating a unifying Republican foil not named Donald Trump. That was from Axios today. Now, that political sage from the islands, Mazie Hirono, told Axios, "I wish that we could just find one face that we could point to, such as with Donald Trump, maybe a composite. I'd like us to do a much more effective job of really drawing the contrast between Republicans and Democrats." Now, one idea being considered is to substitute Trump with Fox News.
These right-wing pundits and the GOP that supports him really, frankly, have blood on their hands.
What does it say that you have people like Tucker Carlson and Fox News drumming up support for Putin?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not frustrating. It's sickening. It's un-American.
Tucker Carlson is one of the most dangerous people alive right now, actually. The voices of the newly radicalized GOP, they're all on the Putin train.
They're on the Putin train. And the once respected Harvard law professor, liberal Larry Tribe, has gone full despot, tweeting then deleting this. Led by Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson, the GOP's Trump wing appears to be throwing its weight behind Putin. If Putin opts to wage war on our ally, Ukraine, such aid and comfort to an enemy would appear to become treason, as defined by Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. By the way, he actually, I think, wrote a constitutional law textbook. It's in our law schools right now. But, of course, this isn't about silencing critics, is it? No. Calling them traitors or questioning whether inching toward war with Russia is the right choice now? Now, perhaps Larry spent too much time in Cambridge, but the entire populist conservative movement was based on the idea of making America so strong economically that it would be able to avoid future wars or conflicts. But now they have a mumbling imbecile at the White House bumbling us toward conflict, and they turn around and try to blame us for it? Nice try. Our nation, of course, remains exceptional. But we've been debilitated by 2 wars that we didn't win, and now we're sitting on $30 trillion of debt. Republicans and Democrats both responsible for that. But as long as the U.S. stays weak economically, the world will become a harsher and far more cruel place. That's news to the left, which has spent the last 15 years attacking our middle class. Rather than trying to fix big problems and make America better, they just use this as an opportunity to demonize their political adversaries. Now think about the stupidity of this. We're on the verge of war, and we still have the same military leadership in place who couldn't get us out of Afghanistan the right way. That's brilliant. And we're on the verge of war, and our trade policies are still making China, Russia's new strong friend, richer by the day. Biden has driven our energy prices higher by limiting domestic drilling. And who benefits from that? Not us. Putin does. Every time oil prices go up, and Biden's supporters, remember, love high energy costs, they're climate crazy, Russia has more money in its pocket to fund his military ambitions. Putin's happy. Yesterday it was Trump, the villain they could run against. Then it was January 6th, then it was COVID, then the parents protesting at school board meetings, and now it's Russia and Fox News. But the important thing to remember in all of this is that after 25 years of establishment leadership, except for the 4 years of Donald Trump who got it right, America is dramatically weaker. So going forward, it's the job of our leaders to fix America, rebuild the military culture, and find a way to get more leverage over China. Meanwhile, the Democrats are slowly committing political suicide. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.